So I'm delighted to have you here today, and as I said, thank you so much for coming. I'm delighted to have a room full of teachers. I was telling people earlier on, I had a very vivid dream last night that I was doing this workshop with my daughter's first year class. She goes to a Gael cloister, and I have a couple of fuckle, I don't have much. So I was actually like, the way the whole dream was going through how I'm going to adapt it for students, and then how am I going to make it through Os Gaeilge as well. So now this is much easier for me than my dream. So that's kind of a nice reflection. Anyway, we're here really today to look at our approach to GCE, the how and but also the what. And because over the last month and a half as well, we've really, I suppose, the main kind of questions that we've been getting from teachers are about adapting their GCE programme given the current restrictions as well. So we are going to spend some time today talking about that as well. So we might just do, because we have a small group so far, we might just do, like, the way, maybe a quick introduction and one question we were asking, just I suppose for a bit of fun, anything new that you've taken up in the last couple of months that you never thought you would? Anything?
Do you mean like habits or something?
Habits or hobbies?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, right.
Positive ones, though. It's all about positivity. Well, it could be negative.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the wine.
No. Yeah. Trying to think. Yeah. I actually don't know. I probably have, but I can't think of any at the moment.
In the last group we had somebody had a baby. that was their hobby. Somebody took up gardening, say, and yeah, so we had a few kind of like,
bee swimmers as well.
Yeah.
I can't get grips with it all. Oh, Mary, you're muted.
Yeah, I would say I've done more cooking.
Yay, cool.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's brilliant.
More walking.
Yeah. More walking. I love it. In fact, just actually to plug, we're putting together at the moment, I suppose, in response again to, it's quite a good year, I think, maybe to, like, the way build the capacity of your colleagues and staff that you work with as well. But one thing that it's the Ethical Education Network. They're actually having a hike Saturday week. I'll send this list now, and if you can just sign up, and it's basically walking and talking about global issues, teachers who are interested in this area. So that's like, some way you can combine your walking and your global issues as well. So we haven't quite got there on the sea swimming one, but we will It's a little bit very short conversations. They'll get shorter as the winter goes on. Okay, brilliant. We are going to start with well, I suppose we're starting off quite positively, and we are going to look first at like, it's an icebreaker that you're going to do together around a poem. Then we're going to come back, do a little bit of theory. There will be, like, quite a lot of breakout sessions, like, the way. Is everybody okay with that? So I know you're all probably tired, but it will keep you kind of awake and everything. And it's more of that you have an opportunity to chat to one another. So I suppose an underlying objective today as well is for sharing and getting to know each other as well. I suppose I work and cover the region of schools in North Dublin. So anybody who teaches in North Dublin, go yay!
Yay!
Brilliant. Anybody who is in Meath, well, it teaches in Meath.
Yep.
Brilliant. Anybody who teaches in Louth? There she is. Brilliant. And anybody in Cavan or Monaghan? No, not today. So, okay, Brilliant. Just to remind you, I will remind you at the very end as well. I've organised just like a very short kind of teach meet for the 22nd of October, and it's kind of like, you know, really to look to meet again and to drop in any maybe like, you know, the way just again on sharing our practice as well, and working out kind of maybe kind of problems together as well. So that's on the 22nd of October between 4:30 and 5:30. We also have a series of workshops as well coming up over November and December, which are thematic areas. So anything from, like, you know, if you're looking at energy or if you're looking at tax and trade. So we have a whole heap of them as well for either you or other staff members that might be interested. And then after Christmas, we have subject specific training as well. We do have our principal symposium as well on the November 11th, which we do urge any member of your school management team to go along to. Okay, so that's all my announcements so far. So let's get started. Perfect. So as I said, this is really about approach. We had a series of workshops which some of you may have attended, or some other, like of your colleagues would have attended, and it was really just an introduction to what were to Worldwise, but also to GCE. And it was also based on this toolkit. If you can see that, do I have it upside down? No, I don't. So actually we posted them out on Wednesday, so every school should have a couple of copies at this stage. But it was based on kind of the steps, and so it's a really good kind of planning document. It's also available on our website. But today, actually, we are going to look at, so see, these are kind of 6 steps that you kind of can help you, like, you know, the way plan your GCE. But really today we're looking at, like, you know, the way digging a little bit deeper into global issues and how you approach that. And that can really follow on then, like, you know, the way it can set a really, really good grounding then when it comes to your, like, the steps after that, raising awareness, taking meaningful action, but also reflecting on it and how the students reflect on it. So basically, if you get, you know, if you're good at this step, that's, you know, the way it follows on. And even if you're like, that's where you're at this year about digging deeper into a theme, that's okay as well. So as I said, it is about the how, and it's about how we adapt also. But it's, I suppose we were going to kind of go into a little bit of the theory around it, and I suppose the theorists that are there, because we have things, say, in the how-to guide, and we look at them now around, like, you know, this is the approach you should take, and there's lots of, like, you know, the way different graphs, but it's all based on, like, theory from educators who have been doing this for a very, very long time and who have researched this to a huge extent. Okay, so part 1, we will be taking a little 5-minute break in about an hour, but before we do, our first task is envisaging a new world. Okay. So, Arundhati Roy, who's a fabulous intellect and academic and poet, has lent her poem to the World's Largest Lesson, which is a pretty good resource on the Sustainable Development Goals. But one of their kind of new activities, which I really like because it's very simple, to be honest, is a short video. And there's a lovely lesson plan with it, with a lovely set of questions with it. And it's really, I suppose, like, we have had so much, I suppose, and the students are experiencing so much kind of doom and gloom as well. It's kind of a nice way to maybe think, well, actually, let's, you know, if there was a blank canvas, what would we do? So we're going to watch it, and I'll actually just tell you the questions afterwards, and then we're going to have a quick, we'll probably need only a couple of breakout rooms that we're going to answer a couple of questions. Feel free to write them in. We have a document you can write them in, but feel free to just have a chat about it if that's where you're at as well. And the questions are, why does Arundhati not want to return to normality? What does she mean by the doomsday machine? And what would you imagine a new world to look like? So what would you imagine a new world to look like? Okay, let's go. Brilliant. I hope everybody can hear. Everybody hearing okay?
Our minds are still racing back and forth.
Sorry. That was very suave.
Whatever it is, coronavirus has made the mighty kneel and brought the world to a halt, like nothing else could. Our minds are still racing back and forth, longing for a return to normality, trying to stitch our future to our past and refusing to acknowledge the rupture. But the rupture exists. And in the midst of this terrible despair, it offers us a chance to rethink the doomsday machine we have built for ourselves. Nothing could be worse than a return to normality. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our databanks of dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine another world. And ready to fight for it.
So as you can see, nice and short. A nice kind of code or stimulus that can be used in a classroom, even if you just have one computer. So now Laura is going to put in the chat just the Google Doc, like in other way. And as I said, feel free to write on it. That's great to write your thoughts.
Our mission is to help people like you build
sorry.
long, successful and meaningful careers in user experience design.
Sorry.
We provide you.
But if that does, as I said, we'd be happy enough for you to have the dialogue around it. But the Google Doc will have the questions if you just need to be reminded of them. So is everybody ready to go?
Super. And if you have any problems, you can put your hand up, you can call the host and we can go in and help out. So just open the doc before I put you in, and I'm putting you in now.
Perfect.
Should be in pairs.
Great. So everybody's in pairs?
Yeah.
Great. Brilliant. Mary and Graham, can you see it? If you go to the more button, the breakout spaces come up as well, if it's not coming up automatically. But it should come up, it's like a blue button. Or we can throw you in, or we can have a conversation here, which is absolutely fine too.
Well, wait, Rachel's in a room on her own, so.
Oh, okay, we won't.
I can move, but I can move up.
Yeah. Well, if Mary's gone with her now, that's grand. So what do you think? Why does she not want to return to normality?
Graham, you're muted.
I'm muted by the host. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sound okay. Yeah, no, I guess it's the concept of continual progress, this notion that, we're never really at a position of, how would you put it, like, I mean, everything is continually evolving, essentially, and this pandemic has probably shone a light on it more than anything now, hasn't it?
Yeah, that we can't well, yeah, I mean, I suppose that not the fear is that we will continue to, like, that we'll return to business as usual if there's a return, like, and that is, I suppose, something that I suppose as activists we need to probably think about as well, like, the way, how do we kind of prevent that, I suppose.
Yeah, I think at the start of this there was a lot of conversation around this theme of a potential, like, new future, and people spoke about the lack of airplanes in the skies, and this could be a real turning point for humanity, and that the planet was recovering, and all this kind of jargon. And then I suppose the introspective and selfish nature of humans, it kind of forces them into a position of just considering their own kind of domain, and everyone just wants to go on holidays. Like, nobody really cares all that much about the environment. Like, that's the kind of the narrative, I think, has changed somewhat since all of this optimistic chat about the where was it, in Venice, like, oh, the fish are finally back in the canals and all this kind of stuff. But, like, the novelty of that conversation wears off when the reality is that you can't go to Lanzarote for 2 weeks,
Yeah, and that's from our, like, I suppose Ireland's perspective, our like, I suppose those who are, still fully employed, all of those kind of things, like, the way it is, like, I suppose that perspective, like, hello Jenny, by the way. Jenny, we're kind of mid breakout room, so you're free to maybe stay with us. We're just having a short conversation in response to a video that we just showed called "The Pandemic is a Portal." But I think there's, like, the way you could probably easily answer the questions we're talking about as well. So it was a video based on a poem by Aaron Dashi Roy, and he was saying how we have a new opportunity now to kind of step through. But we might go to, like, the way one of the questions, without seeing the video, actually, you might be able to join, you will be able to join the conversation based on that. So in the poem, she mentions a doomsday scenario. So, like, what I suppose have we, what's the doomsday machine she mentions? So she's referring to that we've created a doomsday machine. Obviously, as regards, like, our the finite nature of our earth, and I suppose what does she mean by that?
I was messaging Jenny as well, so I've sent the documents. I'm not sure that she's there. Maybe she's just signing in, so I'd say we can carry on.
I'm here. Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, you are there.
Yeah,
okay.
I am. Sorry.
Because I couldn't hear you and I unmuted you, and then I was like, oh, there's still nothing. Maybe you're not there.
Oh, no, sorry. I was having some technical difficulties.
Oh, no worries. Harry, well, welcome as well. So I'm Lizzy, obviously, and we have Graham and Laura.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. So
yeah, I wonder about the doomsday. I think that's kind of an interesting idea, because I think the idea that we were going towards doomsday with our behavior and our I suppose what's happening in terms of extraction and, like, using up resources, and maybe even what's going on politically around the world, and we're going in a trajectory, whereas this has kind of paused us, and there's a bit of reflection and a bit of kind of like, okay, we have to reimagine a new world. So what can that look like? And I think, just in Graham, to what you were saying around people wanting to get away, it's funny, I found what's been really interesting is how many people have realized what a beautiful country we live in. And there's been so, like, I've been surprised about people who hadn't been to so many places in Ireland, which I thought was fascinating, because they always go to Lanzarote or they go to Spain, and now they're like, have you been to wherever? It's beautiful. I'm like, yeah, I have been. Like, but it's like people are now actually kind of recognizing the value of also what's locally and our own kind of delights. So I think that's been really positive too.
Yeah,
sure.
Definitely. Yeah.
If we think kind of more globally, I suppose if you had, like, you know, I don't know, a portal or a click of the finger, in, like, you know, say if we were stepping into the new world and we could have what we kind of wanted for the world, what do you think you would, like, you know, see the new world looking like? That could be based on kind of values, it could be based on a particular issue or a particular inequality.
Yeah, maybe just after November 3rd, when there's a new US president or something, you know, that would be a good start, I think.
Good start. Okay, so like, you know, politics that might be going in the right direction.
Yeah. And then all of the I suppose the policies that would come with an administration which are, you know, conscious about things such as the environment, you know, that like essentially everything comes from top down, doesn't it, you know? And I mean, it's nice to imagine it, but if you don't have people at the top who are willing to like make those sacrifices, like kind of big corporations, then is there any point in imagining it, I suppose, is the question.
Oh, yeah. So it's looking at those in power as well, and how we can kind of change, well, how we can even try to change that. But you're right, it's like, you know, the way its policies need to change as well.
Like there's a certain amount of wealth that's all concentrated in a few hands, and if the will from them isn't there, then it's a nice idea to imagine it, but I mean, how do you kind of get into a position where you're actually a decision maker and you're able to affect change?
Yeah, that's true. Unless we have extremely educated population about all these issues, and then we have a real good, I suppose, civil society that are going to challenge the power that's in place as well. So don't lose hope yet. Don't lose hope.
Absolutely. And welcome everyone back from your rooms.
So welcome back. Any, I suppose, any kind of reflections on, I suppose, both the exercise, but also maybe on some of the conversations that you had?
Well, we were discussing the new normal, and when we were talking about return to normality, about how, well, we kind of can't return to what we used to class as normality because everything has changed now. And we were just talking about like the doomsday machine, where actually Aisling mentioned it's more of a start-stop machine than anything, that, you know, we're going and then we feel we're making progress and then suddenly we're stopped and we just don't know what's ahead of us, or and then, you know, the kind of emotions around that, how we feel with that level of uncertainty.
Yeah, and then how, like, I suppose as well, on how students feel on that level of uncertainty as well, is like, you know, and I guess that's something, like, you know, that we really need, like, you know, I know a lot of schools have kind of alluded to, okay, well, our main aim this year is the well-being of the students and the well-being of ourselves. So that's, like, you know, the way that's really important as well. So brilliant. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for that as well. And for Aisling for that, coining the phrase, that's start stop. So
it's very true though, so true. Like I was just mentioning that I think we're really being able to like critically analyze everything now. We're questioning everything down to what's being reported, to what's in the news, and, you know, I suppose it's making us really stop and think, you know, is this information accurate? Is it correct? And I kind of mentioned that we really are getting to see like how the world operates and how the spread of wealth is operated. And I referenced, you know, Donald Trump obviously getting COVID and how quickly he bounced back. And it's giving students an idea that, you know, when you have access and you have the funds available to access good healthcare, you actually can survive essentially any form of illness. But if you don't, then you have to face, you know, a harder consequence. And it's just showing us how unequal we can be in certain elements of life. And I think it's making us, and that it goes back, we are questioning a lot of things now, more so than I'd say prior to COVID coming to this amazing world that we currently live in at the moment.
Yeah, Aisling, that sounds like you're doing amazing work already, like with your students, like, you know, that's so good, just that, even that level of questioning with them, which is and if we do that this year, that would be brilliant. And if that's what you do in your for your global citizenship, it's a really, really good place to be in, like, you know. So excellent. There, as I said, we'll send like kind of the link with, there's links to, like, you know, the lesson track, some other nice questions there, like, you know, what would the students take through the portal, and it's actually looking at kind of values that would be needed to create a new world, as opposed to possessions. They might go to possessions first, that's okay, let them, you know, let them do that. Brilliant. Okay, are we ready to move on? Everybody okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Perfect. So, as I mentioned, oh yeah, sorry, Mentimeter, very quick. So, like, when we're thinking about things that we want to change in the world, is there certain things that you would really like to change? We actually had this conversation just before everybody came back about what are the things that you'd really like to change in the world. Just if you had, like, you know, the way, I suppose power is a big question, but if you did have the power to maybe change some of the global issues or anything in the world. So we're going to invite you to put, you can either take your phone and put it up to the QR code that's here, and it will bring you straight through it. And all we need is 3 words, or else you can go to menti.com and it's 690141 is the code. But just put your camera up with your phone, and it will bring you straight to the link if that's what works for you as well.
Link is in the chat as well.
Yeah, and it's just been put in the chat there. So you're probably getting very familiar with all these Mentimeters and everything like this, I would imagine. So. Great. So I'll just give you a minute to do that, and then let's have a look at how it pans out. Woo! Look at that. Brilliant. Brilliant. And if you're having trouble with the Mentimeter, just no problem. Feel free to just put your 3 words in the chat. Excellent. Okay. That gives us a good sense of, I suppose, things that you would like to look at as well. Wow, access to education. Great. Brilliant. Brilliant. And I guess the concern out of these issues as well will, like, you know, if you're passionate about them, obviously the students will be passionate about them as well. And just to let you know as well that we have resource sheets actually on many of these issues as well. I'll just show you where they're at now on our website as well. But I suppose one thing that kind of stands out there is obviously inequality and equality. And really, when we're looking at global citizenship education, we are looking at the issues of inequality and global justice. And they really are at the heart of everything we do. So even if we are looking at access to education, we can't really do that without addressing, like, you know, the way justice and equality. As regards trade, we can't do that without looking at unfair and unequal trade. Same with healthcare as well. Aisling just brought up like, you know, the way lovely recent example that the students can relate to around, like, you know, Trump's healthcare, and what does that look like, you know, the way for everybody else, and equal healthcare. So that's what's shining out. Thanks, guys. Thanks for doing that as well. it's a pretty easy tool actually to use in, like, even if you just have one computer in your class, it's very easy for your students to be able to engage in it, even if they're shouting up words to you. And obviously if they all have access to technology, it's even better as well. So thanks for doing that. So just to let you know, just on our website, if you go into the resource library, under each of the sustainable development goals, we've identified we've identified, I suppose, global justice issues within the SDGs. So I mean, the Sustainable Development Goals are a fabulous framework to be able to, for students to be able to engage with global issues, but they don't necessarily sometimes capture everything that and all the inequalities and all the issues that we need to address. So we've kind of done some of the work for you to be able to kind of find those resources, find the videos, find the, like, you know, the way that nugget in there of the Sustainable Development Goals that can really make it very fruitful for your students. Brilliant. So you all mentioned, in, like, you know, the way inequality obviously stood out completely. And I'm just, I suppose, given kind of my take, I suppose, on the things I want to take through the portal. That's very selfish. But anyway, we mentioned a little bit about kind of wealth inequality, and it's very easy to kind of, like, you know, it's I mean, centuries old thing from like the French Revolution and further back and everything. There's always been, like, you know, like, I suppose, the rich and the poor. And this struggle, like, you know, the way, and that unfairness of the rich and the poor, and that's very, very helpful and to address, and it does need to be mentioned within your classroom. And there's some Oxfam do a fabulous report every year where they look at wealth inequality, and I think their latest statistics would allude to, like, you know, I think it's like 26 men own more than over half the world's population. So they can be, those kind of statistics can be helpful as well. But what I think one thing that isn't very explicit, and it goes back to, I suppose, our narrative on how we're actually, like, you know, the way the direction we're going, or the approach we're taking to addressing poverty and inequality. So if you just look at this this particular graph, and it just, I suppose, it shows the ratio of the amount of overseas aid that would go to the global south of 125 billion. Sorry, I put a euro sign and a dollar sign. That's meant to be a dollar sign. And so that's the amount that goes, which is very generous, absolutely brilliant. But then when you compare that to, say, the 3.3 trillion that's going out of the global south in the form of unfair trade, tax injustice, illegitimate debt, and illicit financial flows. And all of this is quite legal as well. There's all policies that say this is okay. And this is not even to mention extraction. It's not to mention land grabs. It's not to mention very, very cheap labor that we find in the global south. So it's just to give you, like, you know, the way, I suppose, a really big picture of inequality. If you're a maths teacher, or if you have an interested maths teacher with you in your school, the Financial Justice Ireland launched a really, really good maths resource based on the junior cycle curriculum this summer. So it's very, very good and very well recommended, which would look at these kind of ratios again, like, you know, the way very, very curriculum specific as well, and some really, really good things that serve both purposes of your curriculum and some really, really good statistics within there as well. So during the pandemic, and I suppose just alluding to, like, your many of you mentioned in our Mentimeter about access to healthcare, we need to really acknowledge the I suppose the issues that I mentioned just there around tax justice and trade justice and debt. We have to remember how much they take away from government coffers. So I suppose this is just a quote, if you want to read it there. I can read it actually and you can close your eyes if you want. Not very relaxing, but we, like, during, I suppose, in particular, during the time of lockdown, we were, like, you know, really trying to campaign for debt relief, which we successfully did, but it was not half the amount that it should have been. And debt continues to be a massive burden, and certainly taking much needed money away from healthcare and social protection. And this is before the COVID crisis hit. And the situation is rapidly deteriorating. It's just getting worse. So debt payments, particularly from the global south, are at the highest levels in years, and we just need urgent action to cancel the payments as well. So when I say we're changing the narrative, we really do need to look at these bigger issues. We have, like, you know, the way of, you know, and it's aid for sure needs to continue, because what are we going to do in the meantime? But, like, you know, we do need to look at how, you know, maybe cancelling the debt could actually, like, you know, the way really, really help more people to have access to healthcare than aid might. But we need that to start happening, and we need civil society to be able to campaign and that, and say that this is, you know, this can't continue as well. And that's where global citizens come in to be able to address some of these issues. Another thing I would be obviously concerned about, and I'd like to take through the portal or leave when I go through the portal, is our level of overconsumption. So a lot of you would have seen this before, and it measures our, it's our Earth Overshoot Day. So our present, like, as an Earth Overshoot Day is at the 2nd of August. But if you look where Ireland is, we're at the 27th of April, which was less, actually. Like, you know, we were at the 10th of March, 10th of May in 2018. So we're actually kind of getting worse. It means that by the 27th of April, we've used all if we were truly to be sustainable, we've used up all our resources within 5 months. So we're completely overshooting by 7 months as regards our consumption. It's quite, I suppose, when you're giving, it's important to, like, give these kind of bigger picture overviews to students as well, to kind of say, okay, well, what's maybe causing the inequality as regards access to healthcare. So digging deep into why this might be happening. And debt certainly would. Love these 2 quotes, and I suppose the first one would be around, I suppose, our language, which we continue to use, and that's okay, but I think as long as we kind of unpack it a little bit. So, like, we use the global south, we use poor countries, we use developing countries, but I suppose when you even think of developing countries, it is the name that experts use to designate countries trampled by somebody else's development. And I suppose, alluding to wealth inequality again, the next time someone tells you they got rich through hard work, they ask them whose. So one of the narratives, I guess, that has been very dominant over the last couple of years, well, the last, like, you know, few decades, would be, well, you get rich because you work hard. So, you know, that's if you're left behind, it's because you didn't work hard enough for it, without any kind of acknowledgement of any systematic, like, you know, the way of any systems or structures that may have allowed that to happen. So just, I suppose, going back to, like, you know, questioning and thinking that you're all doing in your classroom as well. Certainly around, like, you know, global injustice. These are kind of some of the narratives and some of the things that are quite mainstream, and we can be quite damaging when it comes to like, you know, addressing poverty and addressing inequality in the world. So I guess, like, what is our global issues are complex, of course, and we do need, like, you know, a very critical pedagogical approach to that. And we're almost, like, I suppose, all of, like, you know, the global, like, the GCE thinking would be moving towards, like, you know, really unlearning our mainstream ways of thinking. And I think that's, you know, as I said, back to kind of the narratives of like, you know, if you work hard, you get rich. If you, like, you know, the way if we give aid, where, well, therefore, like, you know, the way that the problem is solved, without digging a little bit deeper into that. We are going to use some of the quote here is from Karen Pashby, and we are going to use some of her work today. And she's one of, I suppose, the theorists that we would, that our kind of work would be based on, and our, like, you know, the way I suppose our guides, etc., would be wasted on. And that little cartoon does remind me of, like, you know, I suppose banking education that Paulo Freire would have referred to. Like, I expect you to be independent, innovative, critical thinkers who will do exactly as I say. So rather than students being complete vessels for us to fill. So I suppose just, like, you know, very quick, just to let you know we're not pulling it out of the sky. The educational theory that you might want to kind of have, like, you know, the way I look at some of these people's work, we're all very, very aware of Paulo Freire, and particularly those who are teaching politics and society, who wrote The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, I think was in the end of the 60s, start of the 70s. But what I liked recently at a conference, Judith Klein, who's on the other side of Paulo, mentioned that actually, you know what, we should probably change it to Pedagogy of the Rich. So again, like, you know, the way changing, Judith would have spoke of like changing the narrative so that we are actually, you know, aware of wealth inequality, but we are also aware of how complicit we are maybe in the systems and the structures that keep inequality in place. So our 5 at the bottom there. So from the left, Vanessa Andorotti, we will allude to her work as well. She's tirelessly worked with, well, in British Columbia, and worked with many Indigenous communities as well, to come up with really, really fantastic theories on global citizenship education. Doug Bourne, who's the London School of Economics, and he did a recent study just for Fair Trade Foundation on just, I suppose, that the impact on the whole school as well, but also one of his huge findings was the absence maybe in exploring fair trade of actually exploring unfair trade. So it was great to celebrate and change people's consumer behavior, but without kind of digging into why fair trade was there in the first place. Karen Pashby is right there center. That was my second dream of the evening last night, that I dreamt that I hadn't put her photo in and given her enough praise. So I'm just mentioning, I suppose, a few people who are, like, you know, the way possibly, I'll give you all kind of links maybe to some of their works, and, you know, if you're interested in kind of further reading into into their work as well. Audrey Bryan and Maria Barry are our own kind of Indigenous GCE theorists here in Ireland, and there's many more. They're both in DCU at the moment, working out of St. Pat's. But I'm just going to put up a couple of quotes from not all of these people. But while I'm just putting up the quotes, I'd love you to just maybe, we're inviting you to maybe just reflect on your own practice as well, and see what kind of resonates with you. Sorry, I'll skip through that. That's obviously Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. So here's number 1. So I'll just give you a minute. Everybody good? Yeah?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, all good? Okay. So Maria's actually was very recent study. So she did really good in investigation into, I suppose, with students through several focus groups and observations, just on how they received global citizenship education. So. Brilliant. So I think some really good kind of advice there, almost from our peers as well. And it does, I think, you know, particularly her like looking at, like, you know, that everything kind of comes back to human rights and global justice is really good, like that no matter what thematic area you're exploring, that it kind of always comes back to that basis, I think is a really good piece of advice. The importance of dialogue as well within that. And I know now at the moment, like, you know, again, like, you know, I suppose all the feedback that we're hearing from teachers as well is that students are less likely to have a discussion as well, given that they're wearing masks and everything like that. So I don't know whether that's your experience, is it? Or yeah.
No, not really.
Oh,
We've after having 3 COVID check-ins with the students, so talking about like wearing masks and talking about what's happening with COVID, talking about the changes in restrictions. We just had one there today, a third one, just to kind of make them aware of how, you know, the whole country's now at level 3 and the R rate, and just trying to kind of educate them, because the big thing with our students in particular is they don't watch the news. So whatever information they're hearing is secondhand. So I suppose we're kind of taking the approach that it's important to check in and make them realize that it's okay to be a little bit anxious and it's okay to be concerned about what's going on, and to kind of approach it in a way that they can manage it, and then, you know, bring that skill home as well, because I think it's something we're all going to have to learn to live with for quite some time. So yeah, the COVID check-ins seem to be working quite well.
That's great. That's a really good idea as well, like, you know. So yeah, God, great work, like, you know. And you're right as well. We were, and actually at a previous thing that I was at today for IDEA, we were kind of talking about the importance of students, like, you know, the way having conversations within the family and within their own community about global issues and the impact that it has, like, just on society as well, like, you know. And it's not a forced thing, but it's just, I suppose, around their around what they're learning as well. As I said, like, much of the information that they're hearing, it would be secondhand. That, like, you brought up, like, you know, that you're doing that questioning with your students, which is excellent. And we're actually our next exercise is going to look at how we kind of dig deeper into that. I spoke about Vanessa Androtti, and, like, you know, we were there's I suppose a social cartography which she developed with the Indigenous communities that she works with, and it's called The House That Modernity Built. Given time restrictions, this was in and it was out, and it was in and out of our present workshop, but it is definitely worth a look, and I have a link at the very end, like, you know, the way that you can have a look at it. But I suppose one of the big, like, you know, the way visuals of it is that the house itself, which kind of represents society, or you know, the society we've kind of built ourselves to allude to. It's almost an illusion that leave, like, you know, that hides all there's a lot of hidden costs associated with the house. It exceeds the limit of our planet. It is, the walls are, the foundations of it are separating us from the earth and humanity. And our kind of narrative and our policies are on the two sides, and the roof is global capital. So there's a lot more to it. It does actually give you kind of a good, like, you know, the way, I suppose, visual for students. I have done this with students. Takes a little bit of, like, it takes about an hour to, I suppose, dissect it for them. But it kind of, it, like, you know, the way it really resonates, because I suppose the visuals are like, you know, it's a house on a planet. It explores, like, you know, our low intensity struggle versus our high intensity struggle. That's another day's work. So if anybody wants, like, you know, a little bit more on that, I'm available to do a bit of a workshop on that. But her, I suppose Vanessa's work and the work of, it's a movement called Gesturing Towards a Decolonial Future, have been very progressive in their thoughts around global citizenship education. And one of the things, and this is something I'm going to leave you with for your Uberwalya, it was probably one of the most impactful exercises I've done anyway, because it just really it was reflecting on my own kind of practice as well. And our approach is, I suppose, there's been several approaches, and that it's not that they're, like, you know, the way, there's good things about all of them. I guess, I suppose, if we were to identify one as worldwide global schools, we would be somewhere between the injustice and the separation approaches to GCE. But I guess, like, the whole concept of development education did actually start, like, with the kind of poverty approach, looking at the lack of education, looking at goodwill. There's nothing wrong with goodwill at all. But it's, I suppose, to look, like, you know, the way we're, I suppose, inviting people to look maybe towards an approach that's looking at injustice, looking at the unfair systems, as opposed to, I suppose, some of the symptoms of an unfair world, like lack of education and democracy. Looking at it from a political and a moral standpoint, looking at our complicity in harm and our accountability towards others. Like, our understanding of interdependence should really be about that we are part of an unfair, violent and unsustainable system. And people need to take back the power a little bit from the elites, that we can. I mean, at the moment, yeah, like, you know, as I said, charity and aid are definitely needed, because, like, you know, the way, what are we going to do in the meantime? So it's more about approaching it. So you're probably sick to death of us talking about the charity versus solidarity approach, but I think this lays it out quite well. So my invitation for you I suppose, as soon as we send you all the materials, is what we did as an exercise, and it might be an exercise you do with the students as well, if you're able to give them a handout, or is to just tick, like, the boxes that you agree with. Because I found when I did this, like, you know, I was, like, you know, there was a few things, like, you know, in all 4 categories, I suppose, of different approaches that I agreed with. But it did make me reflect then on I suppose, what my own practice around this. Okay. So, and I suppose, just to allude to the separation one as well, I suppose what's very nice about, like, the basis of caring is that there's no other. So there's no kind of, like, you know, us and them as such. We, if we harm the earth or each other, we harm ourselves as well. So kind of going back to, like, you know, the way actually we have to think about, like, you know, like, the consequences of our actions as well, and get more in touch with nature and other people and humanity. There you go. That is the theory. But as I said, we'll give you kind of, like, you know, the way, a short reading list. It could be endless, but just on this. Okay, so we're going to go and dig a little bit deeper. That's it for me talking. Thank God, said Ollies. But in our guide, we have, which hopefully will arrive, or else the postmans have eaten them around the country, like, you know, the way. But one of these should have, or well, 1 or 2 of them should have arrived with you by now. We have an exercise called Digging Deeper, which is based on Karen Pashby, the lady I nearly forgot to put her photo in and had a dream about. But it's a really good exercise because we've heard of, like, you know, saying why 5 times, and you'll get really to the root causes of many of the issues that we talk about. But I think this is a little bit more comprehensive, as in it really kind of gives you lots of different perspectives as well. Investigating. So you can put a photo as a stimulus, you can have a video as a stimulus, you could have an article. We're going to use an article today. And just to let you know, I suppose the article that we're using, we just kind of picked because we thought it would be a good exercise for this. So it doesn't mean that you have to go off and explore that particular issue that we're talking about. However, if you are, we recommend this publication, Beyond Borders, by Vicky Donnelly of the Galway One World Centre. So we're just using this article as a good kind of, I suppose, starting point for this particular purpose, but you can use anything that you want, okay? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to read it.
Lizzie, I was going to suggest maybe we're now at past. Maybe now would be a good time to take a break before they do the reading. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Good idea. Yeah. So I'm going to put the article up. Laura is also going to put the link in the chat for you to read it yourself, but I'll put it up on screen now so that you can read it. And if you want to go and grab a cup of tea, or I don't know, somebody suggested something else earlier. So if you want to go and grab, like, you know, the way a drink or anything like that, I will put the article up now, and it's also up in the chat so you can read it at your leisure. It's 4:30 now, so if you could be back by well, it's actually 4:32, so if you could be back by 4:37, that would be great. So besides reading the, like, you know, they read part of it if you can, if you need to take a breath and grab a lovely breath of fresh air from our sunny day, that's okay as well, okay? So we are going to use the Digging Deeper tool now. And it's all on the same document. And we're just going to address some of the questions actually ourselves first. So the first set of questions are stretch and challenge, okay? So there's 2 sets of questions that go with that, and some of you will be looking at those. As I said, this can be done with anything, and it doesn't, you know, the way, it's just as a stimulus. The importance is the questions themselves. So you will be going into different breakout rooms here. As I said, it'd be the same document which has been put in the chat now, but different rooms are going to address the different sets of questions. So there is, I'm just trying to think, there's probably only enough of us really for 4 rooms. Is that right, Laura?
Maybe not even 4 rooms, maybe 3 rooms.
3 rooms would be perfect. So maybe actually if we change this so that the first room are addressing power, and so if we maybe do the stretch and challenge questions together, and then power, perspective, and background and equity. Is that okay? Brilliant. So room 1 is power, room 2 perspective, room 3 background, and room 4 equity and fairness. But the first kind of set of questions that we will ask, so what we're trying to do is develop a picture together where we've fully kind of looked at some of the issues that are brought up in this article, but being able to see them from multiple perspectives, etc. But just a few questions that we'll just ask. I'll only ask like 1 or 2 of these now. What messages or ideas have you heard about this issue before? Does anybody want to say anything about what messages or ideas have you heard about this issue before?
It's quite an old issue, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think like the channel seems to have been the crossing between the channels seems to have been in the public narrative for probably about 20 years or so, 25 years. That's from what I can remember. It kind of it wasn't really as prevalent as it has been maybe in the last year or two since Brexit. So I guess like nothing happens by accident in the media, and a lot more coverage would lead you to believe that it's a bigger issue, but I don't know, maybe it's not even that much of a big issue.
Yeah. I suppose which ideas in the article were would see mainstream?
I suppose the relationship between France and England.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the way, so there was that kind of relationship there as well. Was there any ideas that seemed different from the mainstream that we'd normally hear?
Yeah, probably a much more hardline approach from England in relation to its borders and securing its borders.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of issues do you think may have been like oversimplified by the media or by public opinion or by leaders here? Is there anything?
I've unmuted you all there, so or I've invited you to unmute, so please jump in.
Or maybe you want to leave it at that and talk in your smaller groups. So as I said, there's a set of questions similar to that. If you get to it, because we are going to give you a good space of time, we can look at future and responses. So they're all in those. I'll show you very quickly actually where they, or you can just go into it now. So has everybody got the link?
No, not yet.
Yeah, so the link should be there in the chat. So these are questions for the breakout room. And they were just sent by Worldwide Global Schools by Laura there. So I have just on, I suppose, housekeeping in your breakout rooms. It's really so you have the questions there. Please feel free to write into them and have some content. We'd love if we got maybe just a little bit of feedback at the end. So since this is, let me see. So the person with the first name, and I'm not looking, nearest to M, if you could maybe take responsibility in your room to capture maybe some of the thoughts, that would be great. Okay, great. Are you all ready to go? Brilliant. Can everybody find the breakout room button? And if you can't, it would be there's 3 dots at the end of your screen with more, and you should have like breakout rooms there. Did everybody see it? Geez, Aisling, there's fierce sunshine coming in there.
I'm not sure if yeah.
Aisling and Graham, can you see the link?
No, I can't.
Well, guys, actually, you're free to, the way. Aisling, can you hear us okay?
There we go.
We lost Aisling, I think we have. Or maybe she's on a, did she come? We'll send her in. What set of questions would you like to do?
Is Graham's gone in, has he?
Yes, yeah. And Aisling is, maybe she just hasn't come back from her break.
I just want to move Rachel. I just want to move Rachel there because she's on her own.
Oh no, it keeps on.
I know, literally every time.
She's brilliant. She's part of our
Mac and tea. It's yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, Rachel. Do you want to? I'll open them up here and share the screen.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. That would be lovely. Maybe we'll do this. We haven't done the stretch and challenge too, actually, and I don't think there's anybody doing those ones, so we could do those.
Oh, maybe you can share your screen, actually. Is that okay?
I will, yeah. Aisling, how are you? We've put people into breakout rooms, so there's an invitation to have a look at the article. So do you mind if we shove you in?
Yeah, no, that's okay. Sorry, I got to.
No worries, you're grand.
Well,
you're grand.
Ashton can also stay with us if she wants.
Sure. Yeah, that's perfect as well, because we're going to do stretch and challenge 2. Okay, hold on a second. Now, if I find it, I would be laughing. I could just go to the chat, couldn't I, and find it. Here's me giving out. Now, bear with us. So it's just to fill you in, Aisling, what we've done is we're using the digging deeper exercise. So we're all it's a good exercise, as in it kind of sends you in all different directions of the actual topic, just like you've been doing. So it'd be like old hat to you. So we answered in the big group, like the stretch and challenge questions around, like, you know, the way, what messages and ideas have you heard about this issue? But in the art, did you get a chance to read the article, Aisling? Oh, she's gone. Where's Aisling gone? Okay. Will you unmute yourself, Laura? Oh yeah, there you go.
She took the invitation, so she jumped in. So
Okay,
I just need to go into another room because she's on her own now.
Ah, grand.
You can just join that conversation. That's perfect.
Perfect.
I can also, do you want me to just go in and I can listen in? I think that it will follow me.
Oh yeah, actually that's also another idea. That might be nice. I think nobody will mind. I'm going to look at these questions myself for a little bit. Hey, you're back.
Hi, Lizzy. How are you?
How are you? How's it going?
Good, thanks. Yeah.
Good. How did you get on?
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Who did you go with?
We were in the group of power,
Hey.
and the balance of power and stuff like that. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a funny old article, like, you know, the way it's just so.
It's layered.
It's so unhuman.
Yeah, definitely.
Scary, like, you know, the way in the unhumanness of it, like, you know. So.
Yeah. It's just yeah, they're just a commodity that need to be dealt with, kind of thing, and they're used for the I suppose the purposes of exploiting on every level, like in terms of the we were just talking about the exploitation of the migrants for the issue of winning a majority in the House of Commons, like, so they become a political tool, really, you know, or a political pawn, really.
Absolutely, and it's no surprise when, I suppose, like, the reporting is quite, like, you know, the way, just, I suppose, the lack of voice. I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but yeah,
You're right. Yeah.
there's a lack of voice there as well. What did
That was discussed in our group.
really? Okay. So an interesting set of questions. I suppose, like, you know, they could be used in, like, you know, if you're slow, like, you could even take one set of questions a week nearly in your classroom. Like, I think that's it. But just it's more about building a picture around an issue, getting multiple perspectives. Actually, the stretch and challenge, the two sets of questions there, are really, really interesting as well. And we'll put up, like, kind of future and responses now. But I know, say, Mike, I know you would have done a lot of inquiry-based learning as well in your school as well. So it's, I suppose, another kind of way is, like, for the students to come up with the questions themselves about an issue as well, which can be a really, really interesting way to do it as well. So I don't know whether you want to say anything about that, or if there's any other kind of way, I suppose, of questioning that, like, you know, the way that we can share here as well.
I think imagery as well, kind of in our methodologies, would be something that we would have used, maybe to kind of to spark some of that and develop kind of a bit of research into something. That was one of the things, and it could have been like a stimulus piece as kind of we had there with an article, or I remember the past videos as well, that would have been used as well in the past. But yeah, we were kind of in our group looking at, I suppose we started off saying that, yeah, the government kind of, they're the ones with the kind of the decision making and the things, and then the media are kind of now beginning to challenge that, the narrative. But I suppose it's the people in power in those media outlets as well who decide what goes on for developing that. But yeah, to answer your question anyway, I suppose we kind of structured through visuals and yeah, videos as well, would how we set it all off.
Absolutely, like, you know, the way, and that, I suppose we use an article today, but yeah, it can be, like, you know, the way, anything with this set of questions. Shall we look maybe just at the, like, you know, it is, I suppose, important to go through all the different questions, but what we're going to do now maybe is just have a look at the last set of questions, which is around kind of responses. And remember at the start I just said, like, you know, the way that if you I suppose if you're looking, you know, if you really dig well into your kind of thematic area, or whatever you're exploring with your students, whether it's their choice of theme or your own choice of theme, the last one, I suppose, looking at the issue, will the issue reduce in the future as well? To me, like, and we had this whole conversation this morning in like, you know, is the issue, somebody said, well, actually the issue is the demonization of migrants and here, not, you know, the way, it's not about border crossings, it's, you know, it's not migration in its entirety, it is about the you know, so it's about what can we do about that as well. So that's quite interesting as well, to kind of really unpick what is the issue here and what are we talking about. Just as regards like the response questions, then, like, you know, what are the possible responses and the solutions? And I think really when we're talking about, I suppose, you know, looking at what we can do about it and what like actions that we can take as well. What options do we have as citizens to affect change on this issue? And I don't know, I'm just like, you know, suggesting, is it kind of changing somewhat the narrative on it, and, you know, the way, making sure that there's a proper understanding of migration issues. I know for the stretch and challenge questions, I was just reflecting and answering the questions there. Is it like we have no information in that article about where, like, I wanted to know what, like, where did they go after, where they looked after, where did they come from, like what situations they came from. There was so much, I suppose, that was there. So any kind of reflections, I think particularly of that, like, you know, the way the responses as citizens, how we could affect change on this issue. And if we just, I know that's the UK situation, but maybe even on our own kind of reflection around how we treat the policies and how we treat migration here. Anything? Do you think it's a useful set of questions? Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. So as I said, just something that I suppose we're throwing out there. You may have other kind of methods. We'd love to hear them as well, like, you know, the way. So as I mentioned a few there, that like, you know, in response to something like a stimulus, maybe the students are coming up with their own questions as well. Okay, is everybody good? So just to let you know, I suppose, and if you wrote some notes into the chat there, just on your different groups, or if you'd definitely like to say something, or if you wrote something in the document, we'll save that all from actually both sessions. So you'll get to see kind of a full picture in response to that same article, okay? Everybody good? I'd love more words if anybody wanted to say them. No? Okay. Friday evening. Okay, so we are going to, I suppose, at this stage, just so I have a few little slides to go through, but our next kind of main activity before we leave you guys today, let me see, yeah, good, we're all good on time. We are going to be looking at active learning methodologies at the moment, and in response, I suppose, to what, like, you know, what we're hearing from teachers is, you know, one comment was, oh, I've made this beautiful classroom over the last 2 years where I've really encouraged dialogue, and the students have really just got used to working this way, and in, you know, the classroom being very active. And then she said, but now I'm back to chalk and talk and my throat is killing me. So I suppose that's just one experience that, so really we are kind of coming up with as many kind of ideas and bank of ideas. And we have a few already from various, from ourselves and from what teachers have said and from our teacher advisory group. But at this stage, if you could, as I said, we have a few things to talk about before that, and I'll introduce this properly. But if you can think of yourself and what you would like, your own kind of situation, you may be in a situation where all the students have access to technology, and whether that's, you know, because you work on iPads, or is it that you have, it's quite limited online, like you have one computer in the classroom and that's fair enough, and it has okay internet use, so, like, you know, the way you're able to deliver that on a whiteboard, or it might be a personal preference, or that it just doesn't exist. Is it that you're number one and it's you're in a classroom where, like, you know, there's not really any technology, it's a bandy out computer in the corner with a bit of a projector. So if you could just write in the chat whether you would class yourself as a 1, 2 or 3, and then we can see maybe when we can have a more kind of focused chat then when we go into the breakout rooms shortly. Okay, So 1, 2, or 3, okay? That was your break. But just, I suppose, we're not going to do the actual activity because I'd like to give more space to us talking maybe about adapting our program and give that the adequate space. But just to let you know, I suppose, we have a set of, I can show you actually live. I should be more techie, but on our, in our guide, actually, we have, it's more like a checklist for you on like when you're doing a checklist on global citizenship education. So to start maybe thinking about just the exercise that we did there, and like, you know, I suppose when you're kind of reflecting, or else you're kind of going and planning your activities, like I suppose one of the do's would be to identify that power and inequality in the issue. So whether you're doing something like, it might be like, to be honest, your starting point could be something like, you know, the way child labour. It could be something like, you know, the way lack of education. It could be like, you know, the way that people need food aid at the moment in Ethiopia. It could be something like that. But it's important all the time, I suppose, to, like, you know, rather than having focusing on those affected and ignoring the actors who are benefiting or are maintaining the status quo, can be like a don't. So to be careful to kind of, like, you know, the way to identify, well who has the power here, exploring multiple perspectives. And again, I suppose we had this chat this morning just even about like types of media, and different, like, you know, the way being able to kind of read like counter arguments, or like, you know, the way both sides of the story. Obviously debating is a brilliant methodology that can really bring that out, rather than reiterating one dominant or mainstream point of view as well. It might be contrary to your own point of view as well, which is another day's work, but like, you know, the way just to be able to give as many perspectives. And obviously one of the perspectives that's notoriously missing in conversations about global justice are the people that are being affected themselves as well. So important to be able to seek out those perspectives too. Inspiring solidarity, rather than, we'll all have an emotion of feeling sorry for people, but, like, you know, the way, can we, I suppose, turn that into, like, you know, the way, okay, well, what can we do about it, as opposed to just leaving it at feeling sorry for people. And you're probably sick of me banging on about this as well, but to critically explore the root causes of a global issue, rather than exploring the issue with no context around it, or just focusing on the effects maybe of the issue. As I said, the starting point can be with anything, but just as, I suppose, as long as you kind of, like, you know, so that's just some of our do's and don't lists there. But I guess, like, you know, the way our program, I suppose, our normal way that we've, you know, some of you, actually a lot of you that are here present today, have a kind of a well-oiled machine as regards your global citizenship education program, and obviously that's, like, you know, the way going to have to, like, you know, maybe alter slightly. So we're going to focus on methodologies today, but as I said, on the 22nd, where we're going to have kind of our kind of region meeting together just for an hour, we'll maybe look at some of, like, you know, the things around, like, kind of extracurricular, etc. Okay, so we'll be looking in our groups at creatively and critically adapting to a GCE program. But just to give you a couple of ideas before that, Rachel, I hope I'm not going to embarrass you now by quoting you, but we have a teacher advisory group here in Worldwide Global Schools. And these are just some kind of nice kind of things that they would advise. Now, we also have, like, you know, the way a very comprehensive list of like online tools which come from the Irish Development Education Association, and tools that we've used ourselves, obviously. But I suppose these were quite nice, and particularly on a kind of a, like, you know, if you're looking at a situation where you don't necessarily want to use technology. So Rachel, from who teaches in St. Oliver's in Drogheda, maybe you'd like to read your own quote. I don't know. I quoted you, so.
So am I reading it?
Yeah, well, I mean, or just maybe to say, you don't have to read it word for word. So.
Yeah, no, just to explain as well, the bit at the bottom about the teachers bringing in the papers, it just meant that every student had like an individual newspaper, so that usually the game works in that they, like, I leave the papers in the middle of the room and they all come up and take a newspaper. But just given the situation we find ourselves in, the teachers brought in the papers, say, on the Monday after a weekend of reading, and then they weren't used until the Thursday. But yeah, no, it worked really well. Like, we had to kind of simulate, shall we say, that so they did it as an individual, and then we brought in a bit of numeracy. Well, what if you were in a group, how many would you have made, for example? But yeah, no, they were still buzzing about it this Thursday. Couldn't do it 2 weeks in a row, but sure.
Oh, no. So just to let you know, the paper bag game is a really, like, it's quite a good simulation game that kind of looks at, like, kind of well, child labor really, and employment, and you know, back to the, like, you know, whose hard work did you use to, whose back was that on? So brings up loads of different issues. So thanks, Rachel. Thanks for.
Yeah, could I just say, when I said there was like the buzz in the classroom, like, they did get the point of it. Like, it was great to get them active while staying put, but that when they realised, well, what did one bag equate to, or what did 10 bags equate to in actual monetary terms, they were like absolutely horrified that they nearly thought it was a game rather than this was someone making a living.
Absolutely. And I suppose, like, you know, even looking at the connection with, like, employment rights are a huge issue at the moment, and they are quite kind of present in I suppose our, you know, looking at the effects of COVID everywhere, like, you know, the way here, and you know, it opens up a really, really good conversation. So well done on that. We had Yvonne in Ballinasloe, and she, like, just amazing stuff. She was looking at sustainable fashion, and she did, you know, quite familiar probably with the giant step, small step. There's loads of different ways in which you can do it, or any kind of focus. Some great resources as well on it, but she did it outside and as she said, it was on, you know, just outside in the tennis courts or whatever. And they were to, you know, everybody complied by it, but like, it was like, you know, they all had different scenarios that they had to read out and on the statements, so everybody's familiar with that methodology, but just doing it outside was nice. One of our members, Philip, was just saying, I suppose, just even it's a good opportunity maybe to find out kind of the skills that that all the staff have and the teachers have, and, like, you know, the way how, like, given that you probably can't, and most schools can't have, like, you know, the way a person in to give workshops, say, or like field trips might be a bit of an issue. So this alludes to both of them really, like, you know, on finding maybe in the teaching staff who has, like, you know, the way a really cool thing that might be related to GCE, like the milliner who makes hats out of sustainable materials, like, you know, the way and how that maybe they can organize so that she does workshops with students, and they can do a bit of a teacher swap on that. But also he was just saying about going, you know, instead of kind of going on maybe field trips that we may want to have gone on, like the Cool Planet or Hollies or Sonarta, and the places that are the Irish Aid Centre, which are presently not. I think Sonarta may be open because it's an outdoor space for smaller groups, but like looking at our kind of local field trips and the, you know, being able to go. So he explored, say, things like connection with nature, deforestation, because he went to the local kind of forest And they explored kind of deforestation, urban versus rural settlements, and like, you know, the way development around that and how that does look like. But just from, and they all, again, like creating a buzz and creating kind of, you know, that same kind of buzz around global citizenship that there tends to be from the students, without breaking the rules. So, are we ready? We still have time for a good kind of 10, 20, 14 minutes in breakout rooms, where, and then we'll have a quick setup. So again, back to the question, is like, you know, I suppose looking at the kind of present, like, you know, restrictions, it's a real just brainstorm about, depending on your category. Are we all ready to go, Laura, as regards the...
We are. Most people actually picked 2. So basically both rooms are going to be exploring kind of limited technology. So really, I think it makes most sense for maybe you all to just talk about all 3 of them, really. What methodologies can you use, whether they're technology or not, to adapt to our current working situation. So there's 2 rooms. Will I put you in now? It's the link should already be in a chat.
Remember, this is a brainstorm, and it's also to kind of really help out each other as well, on this as well. So you have a good bank of ideas.
Great, so just click the link there, and then I'm going to put you into your rooms.
Nice.
Great. The tech master.
You are a tech master, for sure.
Just learned how to rename them, so I'm delighted.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, you can rename people as well. So.
How can you?
Rachel and Mike are here as well. So we might as well have this conversation as well. In the IDEA conference, what did you think was the most kind of groundbreaking way or approach or technology used?
I thought, if I think about the technologies used, I think actually that the most interesting technology was not using technology actually, and was just having Zoom. And then I think that we had that facilitator that asked us to actually just go outside for 10 minutes and reflect on something. So I think we were asked to reflect on, like, why do we do global citizenship education? What inspires us, or what keeps us going, particularly in these times? And I think just asking a question and then putting us out into nature, and you can do that with your students when you bring them outside and get them to kind of just sit and reflect and then bring them back, was really, really surprisingly hugely effective. So that probably was the thing that struck me the most from the IDEA training and all the online stuff that we did. What about you?
Steph, I think, yeah, and like, again, it was just the way that it was facilitated, that the invitation to leave your phone, like, don't look at technology, like, you know, the way, and maybe find something, like, you know, that was important, I think. And also kind of giving people the time and the space to be able to say something or not, or like, you know, the way, all those kind of, like, just taking it easy, like, you know, rather than putting people under pressure. Yeah, and like, it was a nice validation that he said, like, breakout rooms are good, because then at least people get a chance to chat. They don't, like, you know, talk in main forums, like, you know, the way, which is...
It's true. But also there's kind of, I suppose, if you're going to go online, we had to use Slack. So I thought that was really good in terms of having a space. And I think different schools have different forums and they use different ways to connect with students, using channels and tags and things like that. And I thought that was really useful. And even for the versions that we might use, like Padlet, for example, where I think Padlet's really, really good because the students, if they're on their phones or if they have some sort of technology, they can move things around and they can all see it. So they can all post comments on each other's, if somebody posts an article, people can comment below it and they can move it around, and it works in real time and they can order things. And I think that that's a really good platform for students and teachers as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you know, the way, and Padlet has QR codes as well, like, you know, the way, so I just discovered and that you can hold up, like, you know, you can hold up your phone as well. I did like I suppose I liked kind of the vibe that was created by Ideal, like, you know, the way the music coming in. I didn't get to attend the yoga, which was a bit of a, yeah, that was a bit of a bummer, but we caught the start of the comedy, which was a bit weird. I know that Aisling thought that as well, but maybe I shouldn't say that one.
Yeah, but I think if you can use humor, then that's great. Maybe that didn't really sit 100%, but like there are kind of ways to, like, I know The Economist, they do some quite good like images, like satirical images, or, you know, you can you can actually use satire to really unpack things that you probably wouldn't say because they would be too,
yeah, exactly,
you know, like, oh, I don't know if I can say that, but you can show a picture that's satire and you're like, oh, well, actually, and then you can unpick that with students, and it kind of takes some of the power away from it as well. You know, maybe particularly with like political persons or issues that are a little bit more kind of tetchy, and it kind of just takes that, as I said, the power away. So satire, I think, can be really good if it's done well.
80/20 have actually they put up a lot of new cartoons as well. I think I don't know whether it was by Brick or one of the guys that they work with anyway. And they're quite good. Yeah, no, I love cartoons.
The 80/20 stuff, actually, they've got some really good stuff now about debt and tax and trade.
They really have to be stacked, eh? Yeah,
it's really good. Really good infographics, really good kind of, definitely some excellent visuals to be used there to explore quite complicated, kind of, you might think would be quite complicated, but because the visuals are so clear and you can, you really get it. You can make sense of the amount of money they're talking about, even, because sometimes the numbers can seem so abstract, but actually when you see them proportionally, then it's kind of like, oh, I can get scale. I understand the scale of this. So what is the new guide called? It's the 80/20.
Yeah, it's actually, I might just put that up on the link.
It's green. I know it's.
Yeah,
visualize it, but we can put it into the list of things that they can.
Yeah, definitely, like, you know, definitely for responding to, but I think there is, like, you know, it will be, I don't know, like, you know, what everybody will come up with now, but video and photos and cartoons.
For the reels, because I think our discussion actually in that meeting, in our breakaway room, was around, like, we don't hear the voices of people that are affected by issues. And if we want to create change, we need to empathize with people so that we can push for change to happen. Because without their voices, we don't really understand what, you know, we're not affected maybe sometimes directly with some of the issues, but there are a lot of people, if we just gave platforms to, we would learn a lot and we would be very motivated to act in solidarity with them. And I think then, you know, that's a really powerful, like those videos and even live streams with people talking about their experiences, kind of using Zoom or using whichever platform you use, could be really powerful. I'm going to give the groups maybe just another minute, and then, because it would be really interesting, I'd love to hear what they're coming up with. So hopefully there's time for them to.
Yeah, no, it'd be great if they can share as well. So
yeah, because I think a lot of the NGOs, they're still working online. So a lot of the workshops, you know, that they would have done, they've adapted them for online, so they present themselves. And I know that's something that I've done as well. I've done a workshop with students online, and it's
you do
it. Connection, it's grand.
Yeah, exactly. Once you have the connection, it's like, you know, the way it's doable as well. And I actually must mention that, I forgot to mention that, you know, that there is, I think I mentioned it in the starter workshop, but I might just mention it again, like, you know, that it's still possible for them to have that input.
Yeah. Great. They should be coming into us now.
Okay. Brilliant.
But anyway, we'll have a list of all of the alternative ways of doing things up online very soon anyway, for us as well, with Global Passport and all of the stamps and alternatives that there are.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Did you solve the problems of the world?
Just a bit.
Almost.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd love to hear maybe some of the ideas that came out.
I was just saying there that I was started the issue of food security. And I was just saying that yesterday I was low on class number. The class was quite small. So I literally asked them to take out their phone and go onto Tesco's online food shop and write down the cost of how much it costs to feed them for a week to see, you know, the varying costs. And then obviously the follow-up exercise then is to show them, you know, how people around the world are surviving on very little and how they can adjust to going from very little food to having a wide variety of choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like AFRI are a really good organization here who look at, like, you know, food sovereignty, and they have, oh, they're amazing. And actually, just I suppose just to mention as well, I know that we're like there's, you know, most people are in the situation where you can't have visitors to your classroom, but there's a lot of organizations like AFRI who are willing to kind of do online workshops, and that could mean just having your computer there and they're like transmitting live into your classroom to do a workshop. It would obviously need some co-facilitation from the teacher, and obviously probably more on a, you know, supervisory front, but you know, it is kind of possible as well. Just I suppose something for you, Aisling, just on a follow-up from that, over the summer, he was a special rapporteur for the UN on poverty, Philip Alston, and actually one of the links that I'm kind of recommending afterwards. And I suppose because he puts everything in a really good context, but he's really questioning, like, you know, below the poverty line is $1.90, so $1.90. And he just is really, like, after leaving the UN now, really questioning, should we really be using that same measure, because that is not even enough for people's needs at all. And it's like, you know, although we've kind of celebrated, like, you know, the fact that we've got people above the 190, it's absolutely completely unrealistic when we're talking about poverty. So that's actually be really good, useful follow-up for I suppose.
Perfect, thank you.
So,
we have a resource sheet as well on food, food and growing, so food sovereignty. So you can download that from the website, which has loads of resources and stuff on that as well.
Yeah, and actually we have one of our thematic. Actually, I'll get you. So I'll send you a list, but we have it's one of our dates for during November is on that issue of food as well. So perfect. Anybody else? Any ideas for sharing?
Will you put them in the chat? Because I'd love to see if everyone, because we're not going to have time to hear from everyone.
Yeah, unless you wrote them in, like, you know, the way to the doc, like, you know, the way that would be great as well. So, I said, sharing is caring. Unpairing. But we had, I mean, just even as like loads of people are still doing their moving debates, like standing up and sitting down, and, you know, the way love Suze, not love Suze and everything, and that seems to be working quite well. And actually, as an official competition, the concerned debates are still going on online, so that would be really, like, you know, interesting. I'm interested to see that, like, you know. As I said, like, you know, there's solutions to everything, and I suppose it's about kind of finding that way around, but just on your own kind of self-care as well. As I said, tug buggy completely this year, like, you know, the way, like, really take it easy. It might be just the year that we, like, you know, we're building kind of a bank of, like, you know, like, I suppose teacher courses and events that you can, like, you know, the way attend. And some of them need payment, so if you have a grant there, that's what it's for. It might be a good year of the students who are particularly interested to build their capacity as well in whatever way we can. We have great opportunities to bring up, like, you know, the way issues here, and it's a way of we had a teacher actually getting around. I suppose there was, I think they were traditionally looking at, like, I think it was just last week, World Food Day is coming up, so it was another day that they would normally kind of raise awareness, and just like even the use of the intercom, like, you know, in their school, as opposed to maybe they would have displayed something before where other students could interact as well. the use of video when you're looking at, say, peer learning, like, you know, so say if it's an older class, like a senior class, like a TY, and they've learned, you've this lovely module, and they've learned loads, and you really want to pass that on. So could they do a video of themselves, and then it's shown in another classroom, in the first year classroom or the second year classroom, and that's a way around maybe peer learning. So I suppose there's, you know, there's good ideas out there. It's also like, you know, a year where don't be afraid to try something and fail. Maybe that's the year of experimentation as well. And don't be afraid to I suppose do that. I suppose we've always had a support role in working out where you are at in your school, and we're working within your capacity. So we're not by any means, there's not a, you know, the way one size fit all and you have to reach this target by the end of the year. There's absolutely not anything like that. And just to remind you again of, like, you know, the way that we're here for support as well. Okay. Having said that, so everything that we do, and everything over all the training, all the resources are in response to what you actually say. So there's a quick evaluation of today. Laura's putting it in the chat. Just park it for the moment and do fill it in if you can. And it's really, as I said, so we can respond to that, even if there's, like, you know, there's a lot of open questions there. So if there's some need that you feel that needs to be fulfilled and that you would like to see training on, a reminder as well that we can also do, like, you know, training directly with your staff. And if you've not 2 staff, that's fine. Like, you know, the way we're totally willing to do that on subject areas or on thematic areas, or, like, you know, workshops like this, which are around, like, kind of more hierarching, like, issues around your approach. Okay. The reading list. It could have been, like, you know, the way very, very long. But it's reduced, I suppose, the top, like, you know, and definitely from kind of the material we used today. The digging deeper exercise was adapted from Karen Pashby's Ethical Global Issues. So her Teaching for Sustainable Development Through Ethical Global Issues Pedagogy. All the exercises that are in this publication were actually done by teachers themselves. So they're really, really useful. They're tried and tested, and they give a good reflection on how they worked in the classroom. I suppose we talked a lot today about kind of the really kind of big underlying issues of why the world is unequal. And for that, Jason Hickel's The Divide, or he's another book out now, Less is More, which is more of an like, you know, a climate change focus, but certainly The Divide will give you a really, really good insight maybe into the creation of poverty and inequality. He's spent years kind of researching, like, you know, what his kind of gut feeling was. He you know, I suppose he was upset by I suppose looking at the effects and continually looking at the effects without kind of digging a lot deeper into these issues. We have, as I suppose the sector would have a policy and practice. It's called the Development Education Review. There's excellent, really, really good articles in that. And there's one from a couple of years ago on the critical approach. And they're actually based up in Belfast as well. So it's a Centre for Global Education up there. GCE or otherwise, so this is the movement I was telling you about, the gesturing towards decolonial futures, but their global citizenship education stuff has loads of great kind of different methodologies and social cartographies and everything like this, which will really take your students on a journey. And just the final one there is Learning to Read the World, and that's Audrey Bryan's publication. Just on, like, you know, the way global citizenship education in secondary schools here in Ireland. Just on, I suppose we started our day or our workshop on, like, the pandemic as a portal. And it's just a, you know, quick exercise. I like the positivity, I suppose, that it brings across. But obviously it is, there's been several articles written, you know, looking at, you know, inequality issues, like, you know, during this pandemic. The New Internationalist, like their most recent September to October publication, it's really good and it's really well laid out. It's a short enough article, and it's like the lessons we learned from so far from the pandemic, and it really points out the global inequality issues. It is worth just, I suppose, looking at kind of, you know, a balanced view of the world, that certainly as a media outlet, the New Internationalists are very, very good. And it might be worth, with your, if you have funding with us, to kind of get a subscription for the school, possibly. So just, I suppose, something to think about. Just if you're thinking about, like, I suppose, redirecting your funding to something that you might have had earmarked for something else, it's not possible. Like.
And just to say on it as well, what's really good about the New Internationalist, which is quite different to a lot of the other media kind of outlets that we might have access to, is that it offers voices from different parts of the world. So there's contributing editors from different places. They often have like debates and infographics and like, yeah, it's a really, and it's a really easy to read and easy to kind of get involved in quite maybe political issues or deep issues, but they do it very accessibly. So it's definitely, and you can get the online versions, and therefore everyone can have access. So it's really good.
Absolutely. But this, yeah, some of the articles, like that was their big story, like, you know, the way you can just click on that link and you'll have access to. And then, as I said, the other stuff, like, you know, and the past, particularly if, like, you know, they're usually kind of issue based as well. So like, if you have access to their past archives and you're like, you know, it's an issue that maybe that one of the students have mentioned, you can kind of look back on their past editions and have a look. Very short articles, as Laura mentioned, very visual, and also, like, you know, the way, just all different perspectives as well. There's rarely actually a writer from Europe in their writing as well, so that's good. Aisling, I mentioned, and for everybody as well, I mentioned, just, I suppose it was a very powerful report by Philip Alston during the summer, as he left the UN as the special reporter on poverty. And it was like the 7 key takeaways, like, you know, the way just on extreme, it's a little bit, I suppose, not the like the most positive outlook, but really, really informed and very, very good. But developmenteducation.ie have actually kind of put it together into kind of the 7, like, you know, the way set bite-sized, like, you know, takeaways from his report, which is really good. And then just again, like, you know, there was an article kind of earlier on in March, April, which looked at a kind of a comparison between, like, you know, the reaction to COVID-19 and to climate change. But as you know, we'll keep an eye on our, like, you know, the way our Twitter and our Facebook as well, because we often kind of post articles that are really interesting and really have a global lens to them. So but this, I think this will be enough for you to get on with now for the weekend. I'm conscious of time. I'd love any questions that anybody has. And I hope that you enjoyed that. God, it was very fast. So, and I hope to see again. I hope to see you on the 22nd. As I said, it's just a quick kind of check-in, just to see where we're at. Brilliant. All good.
Good.
All ready for your weekend? Yes.
We may already be there.
Yeah, I know. I think everybody's there. Like, you know, the way. Thank you so much for giving your time today. And I suppose, yeah, if you've any, like, you know, any questions, always here for you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lizzy.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Lizzy.
Yes.
I have a question for you, but I don't